Kate Mila Falcha, welcome to Irish Granny Helen. It's time for our Saturday book, and this week I thought we would, well, I don't know how much of a departure this is. It's a departure from our most recent book, which was a little bit political, sociological, maybe some economics thrown in, so it's time for something lighter. I saw this book and bought it purely on the description on the cover because, big mistake, I was in a hurry. So I want to, I don't know how to describe it because I don't want everybody to say, forget it. At the same time, I have to tell you that I did a lot of condensing. I'll explain. The book is called The Vatican Secret, the Vatican Bombshell. That's what got me going. UFOs, Alien Technology, and the Hidden Archives. This purports to, by Haletis. This purports to be about the secrets in the Vatican archive. And it should have occurred to me, I was hoping that it was going to be full of revelations of all kinds of fascinating things in the archives of the Vatican. There are some, and there is some very interesting stuff in this book. Well worth listening to, because I did the hard part. I condensed what I would call, and this is the first time I've ever said this, ever. This book is not, in my opinion, Pulitzer Prize material. Let's put it that way. It has some really interesting information in it, 100%. But to fill the pages, it just repeats itself over and over and over, to the point where I just noticed this. I'm still finishing it up. And I noticed this. I mean, knew that it was repetitious. But I thought, okay, maybe it's me. Maybe this information just seems too self-evident. So here's part of a chapter. The title, like the subtitle of this part, is The Concept of an Energy Self-Sufficient City. A few paragraphs later, a new subset, the concept of an energy autonomous city. That's the same thing. See, let me find you another example. I've never done this before. I'm usually so flattering of books because most of the time when I pick a book, I kind of know what I'm getting into. I have to say I was disappointed that for the sake of filling pages, the author repeated himself. That's okay. I have whittled it down, and we're going to go over listen to this. Tell me what's different about this. Neuroscience, quantum physics, and collective consciousness, as opposed to futuristic technologies for connecting to the consciousness network. There is a lot of really interesting information buried in this, but I had to make the effort, so you're welcome. You don't need to just watch the video. And there's some kind of shocking stuff in here too. Now, the other thing that I need to make a caveat, in Vatican City, they would say that means a warning. There is a lot of insiders report, quote unquote. Expert witnesses say, people from within for decades have revealed. There are a few names thrown out there, and I actually went and looked up some of these people to see what I was dealing with, and they are who they say they are, but that isn't always necessarily highly respected. Some of them are. Some of them are very highly respected, and especially the ones in science, which I thought was interesting. But there are a couple of clergy people that are making allegations here that I don't know. We're going to take this as an opportunity in critical thinking And at the same time, you will discover some really unusual things. And the description of the Vatican archive is just a trip. I mean, literally a trip, miles. Okay, let's just get started now that I've downplayed the book and you've all quit. Please don't. Please stay with it. It's worth it. It's an odd book. Okay. Little dedication here, and I thought it was important enough to take a note on it. Okay, dedication from the author. To all those who have the courage to look beyond the veil of appearances, and to those who are not afraid to ask uncomfortable questions. To those who know that the truth is never static, but a constantly expanding horizon. To those who feel that our place in the universe is only the beginning of a greater story. And to those who, reading these pages, will feel an ancient memory awake. May knowledge be your light and curiosity your engine, with gratitude and a spirit of exploration. I thought that was lovely. So I like the dedication. I also think that part of the issue with this book, even though it was written in 2025, it makes reference to things that, if you've been following along in the books that I've covered, we know about this stuff. This is not revelatory, but it's in the context of a larger picture, so it's worth sticking around. There's an introduction, and this book is oddly put together. It almost has no real distinction between chapters. There are section heads, but they're not really. Let me show you what I mean. I don't even know what to call it. So it's like this, but what's under this is not necessarily new from the beginning. So it's just, I don't know what to say, but there are some tidbits in here that are fascinating. So the mystery of the Vatican, the Holy City, and alien technology, that's what we're talking about. That's one of the big deals. The Vatican is the impenetrable center of power that guards secrets that are inaccessible to most. It has secret archives, forbidden manuscripts, preserved documents, and when you hear how sophisticated the situation is, it's kind of mind-boggling. And these documents and manuscripts, now this is coming from somebody who worked there and who spilled the beans. They attest to the fact that there have been encounters with extraterrestrials. There's advanced technology, actual physical advanced technology, purported to be hidden in what you would call the bowels of the archives, because it's not just books. And esoteric knowledge that could rewrite history, which when they talk about this, they kind of repeat themselves. So I've condensed it into a single discussion. So why is it hidden? Why secret? Why so controlled? Why? That's kind of the main theme of this book, is trying to figure out what that is. It goes way far beyond religion. And I think in light of this, interesting, I picked this a while ago, and in light of what's going on now between certain world powers and the Vatican, I think, excuse me, I think we're seeing play out a power struggle that is not a balanced power struggle. The Pope is not an elected leader, not truly elected by any constituents. It's a closed center of power that put him in place. He's not a politician, but he is a world leader in the sense that a lot of people belong to his belief system, Catholic Church, and it has dominated geopolitics in a number of different ways at different times in human history since it was first founded, which arguably is about in the 300s. So I see this as a power struggle from one point of view, I think secular world leaders might, if they have no sense, look at themselves on a par in standing in the history of the world with the Pope. But the Pope occupies a position that's very old and has been, just in general, I'm talking about other people, has been revered and respected, has been instrumental in driving human history based on religious beliefs, allegedly. and I just think that this is not an equal comparison of leadership. It's a mistake to be a head of a state government and consider yourself on a par, because you're putting yourself up against an enormous weight of history. So, and then belief, faith, which is also formidable. So what's going on here? And like the book says, it goes way beyond religion. For example, in the 17th century, Pope Paul V created the secret archives, but they're so shrouded in mystery that, of course, as soon as you start hiding things, the gossip starts, right? The speculation starts. And there's been endless speculation over the years. And there are some things that we're going to talk about. And this is my problem with this book, is they'll mention something and then they'll come back to it soon thereafter like they've never mentioned it before. So what I did was condense all that. So they talk about rumors of the Verona UFO case in 1933, of the chronovisor. This is this is a hoot. A machine capable of observing the past. So those are two examples of what is purported to be kept hidden under the Vatican. Why would the Vatican be hiding evidence of ETs or anomalous events, alien technology, strange encounters, advanced knowledge from the past, but far more advanced than where we are now, or anything to do with anything up beyond the atmosphere? Big question mark. So those lucky enough to peruse this archive, because it's very regulated, they talk about these things later. It's interesting. I guess they don't have to sign lifelong non-disclosure agreements. They talk about more advanced technology than we have, but that existed in our distant past. Excuse me, the wind's blowing. They talk about unknown energy sources, which is really interesting. And so this book addresses that, takes insider accounts that they, that not really whistleblowers. They've talked about it, but they haven't made a big press conference and come up in front of government hearings, nothing like that. But they have spoken frequently about this sort of thing, of secret meetings being held, and testimony exists that the archive includes fragments of possible ET material, including bits and pieces of UFOs and strange metals and perhaps even bodies. Now, keep in mind, very little of this is 100% proven. However, there are people who are very well respected, who have been long time employees there, high up in the church, who talk about this. So there are theories and speculations on extraterrestrial secrets in the archives. The book claims that there are alleged documents hidden in the Vatican archives that could shatter our conception of reality, including sightings of UFOs by high-ranking church figures, meetings between high church officials and scientists about inexplicable phenomena. But why is the Vatican, a bunch of priests and bishops, why are they meeting with scientists. Although I should be more accurate. Most of these high-placed clergy, cardinals, archbishops, even the ones that are a little lower in church order, they're enormously well educated. You don't get into the Vatican to work without really being well educated. Unless, of course, you're a nun and you're only there to, wash the floors, but that's a whole other story. So a lot of these men may not have dramatically higher jobs. They're not part of the College of Cardinals, perhaps, although some are. But you could pluck a handful of them at random and discover umpteen degrees and languages spoken and travel done and just a real breadth of knowledge. So we can't dismiss them meeting with scientists. Many of them are scientists in their own right. Like the observatory, the Vatican Observatory. It's run by expert astronomers. So they talk about inexplicable phenomena, medieval manuscripts describing flying machines, and they even have pieces of Sumerian texts about celestial visitors. This is the kind of thing that I feel none of us is shocked to hear. I think there are people who would pick this book up at random and all of it would just be revelations to them. They had no idea. We've had the great honor of having Paul Wallace as a guest, a man who has studied all of this stuff for so long and has shared in his books. And we've had the good fortune to be able to dig into books quite a bit that present these ideas. What I'm saying is this is not new to us, but it's interesting coming from this angle. I think it's worthy of attention. Why is a church mucking about in quantum physics? Just, curious. It's said that there are documents that are testimony of monks' encounters with sky visitors, as they describe them. There have been sightings over church buildings witnessed by high church men. References to anachronistic astronomy. Now, what does that mean? Well, it's like the Dogon. The Dogon of Mali, I believe. They're really into Sirius, the dog star, that whole system. And their mythology talks about twin stars. And it was always dismissed as, mythology lore by scientists because they'd look up there, even with telescopes, and they wouldn't see twin stars. There was no twin star until the Hubble telescope was put out there, and they discovered, I think it's called Sirius B. Sirius, the dog star. The church has collaborated with governments, with Secret Service, with intelligence to gain information clandestinely. The Vatican has long historical strong interest in astronomy and the cosmos. Isn't that it? What are they looking for, God? I don't know. They have among the most advanced observatories in the world. For example, at the Castel Gandolfo, which is where the Pope lives, I think. They work with leading scientific institutions. And there's another little bit of information that I won't tell you until we get to it in the notes, because this does repeat and repeat. So there's another little tidbit that I had no idea. I think it's interesting. So why is the church dabbling? Aren't they supposed to concentrate on God? Some say the Vatican has information, some say, on extraterrestrial encounters over historical periods, that it's documented them carefully since the Middle Ages. Now, why would they do that? That early missionaries have reported celestial encounters visions, signs. So many of these cultures, they claim celestial origin. Many of the cultures that exist in general, Paul Wallace has talked about it, but around the globe, many cultures talk about the celestial origins of humankind. So the theories, the Vatican archive, this is a theory. The Vatican archive contains ancient documents from forgotten ancient civilizations that were in contact with ET. We made reference to technology that's far advanced of where we are now, but coming from the past. Not a surprise. We've heard this before. However, interesting that people are claiming that the Vatican has proof that they have texts from Atlantis, from Alexandria, the library at Alexandria, which supposedly store very ancient knowledge that we don't get to hear about. There are references about the Vatican archive having fragments of Egyptian manuscripts, Sumerian tablets, information on the Anunnaki. They have Mayan writings, and that's harder to get. Incan and Mayan, Aztec, any ancient documentation of any form, fragments, writings, even jewelry and stuff. It's very hard to really have access to that because the conquistadores made a point of destroying it all as much as they could. Some was saved. But all of these writings are examples, of visitors from the stars. And the rumor includes that they have extraterrestrial technology. Now, I thought it was all at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, but apparently not. And there are some stories in here about that, which I find very interesting. They even have evidence of encounters, like material gathered, documentation, and eyewitness statements of encounters that nobody in the public has heard of, or at least most people haven't heard of. We probably have. Including materials not on the periodic table. Now that's interesting. So the periodic table describes, in relationship to each other, all the elements. And this book is claiming the Vatican knows about more and not of earthly origin. And materials that obviously have a non-earth-based structure. It brings to mind the foil metal found at Roswell that could crumble like aluminum foil, but when you let go of it, it opened itself up and smoothed itself out and had no wrinkles. Couldn't be cut, couldn't be burned, couldn't be hurt with a hammer. A lot of people saw that. I don't think that's anybody's imagination. Okay. One of the most controversial stories is that relating to the Verona UFO case of 1933. This was an aircraft said to have been recovered by the fascists in Italy, but passed on to the United States government at the end of war because of the allyship with the US. And they think that there have been declassified archives, stuff from Italian intelligence at the time that verifies this. The Vatican itself is interesting. It's been more transparent, more open of late about the possibility of extraterrestrial life. They went out of their way in one of the writings, one of the bulls, one of the letters that gets sent around. Even if there were intelligent beings on other planets, we're all brothers in the creation of the Lord, and we should unify. That's mind-boggling. Not mind-boggling necessarily for us. It's mind-boggling to hear the Vatican say that, because they wanted to burn Copernicus at the stake for talking about heliocentrism. Okay. there's a rumor. Now, we talk a lot about they said, or it's been suggested. Somebody whispered. Block of salt. The rumor is the church will begin to slowly release this information and may reveal events and knowledge not known to people right now. I think that's fair to say. I think that they're doing, they're titrating. I'm sorry about my dogs, of course, right? They're titrating what knowledge, what information they think people can digest moment by moment to try to break the ice, do it gradually, kind of like allergy shots. So you don't go into shock, when you're introduced to the whole thing all at one time. The objective of the book is to explore the link between the Vatican and alien technology, but in the context of this really strange archive. It explores the possible possession of ancient writing. Now, how many ways can you say they have ancient writing that might support a knowledge of alien technology? How many times can you say that a little bit differently in a book? It's crazy. So the question is the church a silent observer, or is it an active role, taking an active role in managing the information about ET presence? Like, what is the role? Why? It's back to the original question. Why? Why would a bunch of priests, a bunch of theologians, why would they be all up in this sort of science fiction notion? Let's be real, in most people's eyes, although it's getting better. Why would they be so into the notion of ETs and alien technology? There has to be a reason for that. Some people say, well, they're just trying to preserve the information, so it's not lost. Other people think it goes deeper than that. I think most people believe it goes deeper than that. The Vatican controls disclosure, and it has a big role in disclosing it. When you think that the Pentagon is in charge, we're living on a planet. The United States is not the only group of people involved. And if you follow ET, UFO experiences, they happen globally, and they've happened historically for a very long time. We don't have the sole allegiance to that. It happens everywhere. Mexico, until fairly recently, had a show every week on TV about all the UFO experiences of the week. Anyway, the Vatican probably controls disclosure for a number of reasons. They want to avoid cultural and religious shock. I can understand that. But they're afraid it would destabilize religion and world power. Now we're getting into the crux of the issue. They don't want to let go of control. They don't want to be the only ones in control. What effect would the proof of ETs have on religion? This would shake up the origin story of the church in a big way. Would this require churches to rethink their role as the guidance of people? Yes. So these questions here get asked over and over. So here are some of the questions that the book wants to address. Does the Vatican really have secret archives with information on UFOs? Yes or no? Is there concrete evidence of contact between the church and ETs? What are the historical testimonies that could suggest an interaction not explainable by official science? So are these really being kept in an archive? Are they true? Do they show anything? Do they prove anything? It's kind of the same question. What could be the role of alien technology in the geopolitical and religious strategies of the Vatican? Strategy is doing all the heavy lifting in that sentence. If the Vatican is truly the custodian of secrets about non-human intelligences, with whom is it sharing this information, and for what purpose? Very interesting question. Does the future hold an official disclosure on this hidden knowledge? And if so, what would be the reaction of global public opinion? I don't know. I can go over like a lead balloon the way it has already, but I could be wrong. I don't know. So if this is true, if all of this speculation is true, how much longer are they going to be able to keep a lid on it? Are we on the verge of an epic revelation that will redefine our place in the universe? So what sources are there that would lead people to even speculate about this? Because these people have reputations to lose. We can talk about it all day long, and it doesn't matter. My family already thinks I'm crazy. So if I talk about ETs, they don't care. Some people, they have jobs. They have important professions, careers, and yet they're still talking about this. I think that's significant. There's testimony of insiders, people who've worked for the Vatican, in the library, in the archives, historians, linguists, scientists. There are a lot of scientists who work in that archive. I think that's interesting. There are a lot of certain kinds of sciences involved in archival work because you're talking about chemistry, you're talking about physics, you're trying to keep and preserve material things over a very long period of time. It requires a science background. But there are stories about secret meetings, forbidden documents, forbidden technology, and they're all in the dungeon, which we're going to get into a description of. It's mind-boggling. So for example, here's a name for you, Monsignor Corrado Balducci. He has a very interesting job. He was the Vatican exorcist. Imagine what that looks like on a resume. He has said that he knows that ETs are real. And he does not believe that they're a threat to Christianity. Professor David Jacobs might have something to say with him. He says the Vatican has collected information about this for centuries, that intelligent extraterrestrial life is not in conflict with church teachings and actually expands them, which is interesting because in the past, long ago, this notion, I don't know what is wrong with my dogs. I'm so sorry. I do know what's wrong. This will amuse you. It'll distract you from the book, but it'll amuse you. I have a parrot, and the parrot knows that certain sounds that she makes hurt the dog's ears, and they howl. And she gets bored. She gets a kick out of torturing the dogs. It's just awful. She'll make those sounds. They're kind of high-pitched, and the dog will howl. And so she'll make 2 sounds, and the dog will howl some more. There she goes again. I apologize. Where was I? Never a dull moment around this place. Okay, that these revelations don't really contradict church teachings, they actually expand them. So rather than saying anthropocentric, I think is the word, God made Adam the center of creation. That was the old way. Now they're a little bit more open-minded, and they say, well, if there's intelligent life, other beings on other planets, God made them too, so it's okay. So this attitude is supported from Balducci by statements of former intelligence officers and military personnel, Italian and from other countries, the United States. They say they have met with high-ranking prelates, that's church guys, and scientists that specialize in the study of extraterrestrial technology. They've collaborated with the government to study all this, and the Vatican and the Pentagon share information on what they call UAP, unidentified aerial phenomenon activity. So it's not like the Vatican looks in their telescopes and sees something and then secretly hides it in the archive. They're in constant communication back and forth with the Pentagon, but not just the Pentagon, with all sorts of military around the world. Also, analyses of researchers who have been studying historical writings, they talk about beings of light. They talk about fiery chariots. We're familiar with these. Some people aren't, but I know we are. They talk about celestial messengers who transmit advanced knowledge to humans. There are claims that entire sections of the Vatican archive are dedicated to these sort of unexplained phenomena. They're not just old Roman books or whatever, manuscripts. They're not just that. There are areas dedicated to UFOs throughout history, to ancient confidential letters between popes and scholars about ET life and ancient civilizations being in contact with ETs. So these popes and famous academics of their time, no matter what was going on the surface in history, so maybe the Inquisition was going on, maybe the 100 Years' War, I don't know. The Napoleonic Wars were going on. But all the time, popes were quietly communicating back and forth between academics and archaeologists and astronomers, and sharing information that was not made public. Historical documentation and the hypotheses of ancient researchers seem to support this stuff, and the people coming out of the Vatican and talking are saying this is a real thing. The Vatican archives contain thorough documentation of every aspect of humanity, including details of anomalous and phenomena and sightings. For example, now I don't know about this. There's a thing called the Nuremberg Prodigy of 1561. Now this is a remarkable thing. This was documented by eyewitnesses at the time and written down to be sure that it wasn't lost. So hundreds of eyewitnesses saw spheres, cylinders, luminous crosses colliding in the sky above the city of Nuremberg. And the whole entire population was all worked up. They were afraid. They didn't know what was going on. They thought it was the end of the world. So often interpreted as atmospheric phenomenon in modern times, science dismisses it. Oh, it was swamp gas. Some scholars think, wait a minute now, this sounds very much like the orbs and lights that are documented today relating to UFOs. Were these an example of more ancient UFO sightings? And this is all kept on record at the Vatican. Also, the miracle of the Son of Fatima in 1917. So, Mary appeared to these children and shepherd children. And we've talked about it before, but long story short, there was a promise from her that she would give proof that this was really happening. And tens of thousands of people showed up in this, this little Portuguese village that had never been anything, a blip on the map. They destroyed the farmers' fields where they, grazed their sheep and grew their crops. And it was, you can imagine, it was a mess. And a lot of skeptics showed up. Journalists came to scoff, make fun. And there was something that happened, and they tried to record it. They tried to photograph it. They got a little bit on still photos, I think. They couldn't get it recorded on film, which was rudimentary, of course, at the time. According to some researchers, this was not an event that was related to like Mary, the Mother of God. That was how the children interpreted it. But this was an interaction with a non-terrestrial intelligence. And things were said and given to the church secretly by these children, and they still have not revealed what that was all about. Very odd. And it was called the miracle of the sun, because at one point the sun started moving around in the sky, and this was witnessed by tens of thousands of people. So either it was mass hysteria or something happened. What they saw was the sun falling, coming closer to the ground and spinning and being all weird. And I think there was a multiple sun, and then it went back. So who knows what they saw. There are numerous ancient texts about, and this is often hand in hand with cultural mythology, with different societies' origin stories, religions' origin stories. Intelligent life comes from the sky and gives gifts of advanced civilization, things like, here's how you build a house, that kind of thing, to humanity. Here's how you grow corn, whatever. So an example would be the Book of Enoch, and this is an apocryphal text, and that means probably not real. I mean, there's a written down stuff there. It's not that the text doesn't exist, but they think that the story is not real. And I don't know how they determine, other than maybe it was written so long after the fact by the wrong people, but how did they determine one book in scripture from another? I don't know. So this may or may not be true, but it talks about the Watchers, and the Watchers descent. They were the intelligent extraterrestrial life, and they descended and they gave humans forbidden knowledge. And the story is that the Vatican archive stores copies of this Book of Enoch. So why would be the question. Then there are the Indian Sanskrit texts that talk about the Vimanas. The Vimanas were these stupid dogs, vehicles in the sky that were used to travel and, to have battles. And they had weapons on them of enormous power. The Vatican even has never translated some of the scrolls that are in there and some of the texts that are in there from Alexandria. In other words, they don't even know what they have. Independent researchers who've been to the archives claim that the Vatican knows, collects, and archives all of this stuff on purpose, and also collaborates with government entities and military to study the phenomenon. So there are leakers, and there have been leakers over the decades, and some things are known, and these documents and this information exist because it is just repeated too often by people who emerge from the archives. So some insiders have spoken, some have been anonymous, and they cross-reference these alleged stories with academic sources and with previously known history and with scientific studies. And they come to the conclusion that, I don't know, there's an awful lot of possibility of truth here. Some declassified documents, so some of them have been released to the public, and they show that the authorities have previously hidden them, previously scrutinized them, and taken them seriously. So it appears the Vatican is controlling information and revealing some of that information slowly but surely. Now I'm going to stop here because I'm at a really good place to stop. I'm going to make the next video just a little bit longer, and I'm stopping because I'm going to go down, yell at my parrot. I'm going to try to sort out the problem downstairs so we don't have to listen to that because it's really distracting and really annoying. So as you can see, this book sort of stops and starts and stops and starts, and it asks the same questions over and over, and I've tried very hard to pare that down. And I think the one important thing to remember is that there are there is a handful of people who are willing to have themselves not be anonymous. And they are credentialed and they are experienced and they are respected and they're saying some really crazy things. Crazy, non-conventional, unconventional. So let me go make peace in the world and I'll be back in a minute. And you take a little break. Thank you very much for watching. Slongafoil, Slanja.